Hello and welcome to the Tea and Tights, the Great British Wrestling Podcast for Great British Wrestling, as featured on bodyslam.net and John's Podcasting Network. This is a brand new, all different. That's a Marvel reference. Tea and Tights, British Wrestling Podcast. Big Daddy Dan is currently taking a break. He's just got some things to deal with, and that's absolutely fine. I hope to see him back in the chair soon. So I'm going to have a chorus of guest co-hosts over the next few weeks, and I'm joined today by the man behind the Untitled Podcast. He is the godfather of Swole, Troy Grant, and I'll get him to introduce himself in just a second. I'm, of course, the Great British Attacker, Mr. Andrew Moore, Andy to most. Troy, give us more details about who you are and where you're from.
Well, firstly, thank you for having me on and as part of the podcast. We listen to you guys an awful lot, and it's a pleasure to be on here. So thank you very much for inviting me. As you kindly introduced me, I am Troy, known to some as the Godfather of Swole, and I am 1/5 of the Untitled Wrestling Podcast. And we started that back in September of 2020. During lockdown, when many of us had not an awful lot to do. And so, came together from kind of several corners of the country, some from Liverpool, one from Scotland, one from Ireland. And we just came together to just chat a lot of nonsense about wrestling. And here we are a couple of years later, and still really, really enjoying it.
And that's, of course, you've got a great connection to the Great British Wrestling scene. You're out a lot of shows a lot of the time. Most recently, you were at the TNT Extreme Fields. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So we struck up a really nice partnership with the guys over at TNT. Where we will be doing a lot of interviews, some backstage interviews, some live Q&A stuff, and just being a part of the proceedings of a lot of their shows and events going forward. So it's really cool to be part of that. The first step of that was this weekend, as you mentioned, at TNT Extreme Fields, which was a thoroughly enjoyable show. And we were lucky enough to speak to several members of various rosters and promotions from around the country at that event.
Jay's such an awesome guy, isn't he, over at TNT Extreme?
Really is. Lovely guy.
First show I got to go to a TNT Extreme, he gave me such a lovely welcome, and I can't thank him enough for doing that, and positive words. And of course, they are part-owned now by the owners of Progressive, Martin and Lee as well. Again, two extremely nice gentlemen who just want to see the best for British wrestling and its performers.
Absolutely.
And we'll talk about a few of their shows up and coming in a little while. Before we kick things off, we'll keep it light and breezy. We'll talk about the PWI 150 that just came out, and we'll be mainly focusing on the UK independent women who managed to feature on that list. In total, only 8 made the cut, which I would have thought we might have got a few more in there. But in total, it was Alex Windsor at 24th. Emerson Jane at 25th, Jetta at 45, Laura Di Matteo at 73, Alexis Falcon at 111, Kanji 113, Debbie Keitel 128, and Charlie Morgan 138. What do you make of that list?
I'll be honest, there's some names on there I don't recognise. I know there was a fair few, certainly in the top 10, a couple of Stardom talent. And I know Stardom's been very much on the up. Certainly this year, there's been a lot more eyes on that. So it sounds like it's something I need to watch and maybe get more familiar with a few of these people on the list. But it was nice to see, just aside from some of the British independent wrestlers, which we'll get onto in a moment, it was nice to see a few more start to make it and group up the list. One in particular, Jordan Grace. I'm really, really happy to see her as high as she is. I think she's been doing, we say this a lot on the podcast, the Lord's work in the women's division over in Impact, and watch a lot of her progress on Instagram, social media and whatnot. Just the transformation that she's gotten herself into, body shape, athleticism, all of that. She's always been incredibly athletic, really well built, but just to see that transformation and to see this now, the kind of the fruition of that, to be number 6 in the top 150 is well fantastic. Deserved. So really, really well deserved. But there was some interesting names in there. Some maybe quite a bit higher than I imagined. I'd say Charlotte Flair. It feels like she hasn't wrestled for about half a year, so I'm not quite sure how that works. I've read what the criteria is, and I'm still trying to get my head around that. But to your point at the start of this discussion, nice to see some familiar British independent wrestling names in there on the women's side. How about yourself? Was there any you were surprised or what?
I'm sure there was a few NXT UK talents that probably also got listed. I just couldn't find a list for them. I think someone like Molly Spartan might have been really overlooked. Lizzie Evo, again, would definitely be a performer. Yeah. I mean, my top 10 doesn't read too different to all the 8 ladies that did get listed. Alex Windsor, I feel like has been the pinnacle of women's wrestling in the UK for a long, just since she returned. She just returned to the scene last year and just came out with a bang and has gone on. Emerson Jane is a phenomenal talent and very deserving of her position. I would have had Kanji a little higher because I would have put her in my top 3. Lizzie Evo would be my 4th. Lana Austin, I think I might be just putting her down to a lot of her recent antics. She's made herself invaluable to the scene.
Absolutely.
And then I've got Alexis Falcon, Molly Spartan, Jetta, Laura DiMatteo, and Debbie Keitel. Yeah. Charlie Morgan not quite making my cut on my top 10. Did you have a chance to have a look at a 10?
I've got 10. They're not necessarily in order. And I've done this more based on just what I've been lucky enough to get to go and see this past year. So this isn't necessarily based on they should be in this order or they should be in a particular position. This is just, for me, more standouts of the British wrestling scene for the women. People that are already established, people that I feel that is definitely starting to make waves and really make a name for themselves this year. In no particular order, I've got Harley Hudson on there, who really is starting to become quite a recognised figure, and she's fantastic. LA Taylor, you mentioned Lana Austin. LA Taylor, if anyone watches Progress shows, is now part of the Lana Austin experience. Alexis Falcon, who's already in there, fantastic. I feel probably could have been a little higher up there. Lizzie Evo, I feel if I've not seen her on that list, and I don't think I have, is a glaring omission. Kanji, who you've also mentioned, is on there. Definitely should have been higher up. Someone who isn't on there, but I have really enjoyed as part of Northwest Strong is Rio. And I think she's fantastic. And if she hasn't made it on there this time, she absolutely should be next year. And I think, as I said, I think some of these ones on my list are probably ones to watch out for. And I would put money on most, if not all of these featuring on there in some position next year. Charlie Morgan, who I've already mentioned, Laura DiMatteo, also on that list. Session Moth Martina, another one that seems to be doing the Lord's work. She's had appearances on AEW, TNT, just all over the place. And to pull the curtain back kind of just before we were recording, we were talking about kind of characters in wrestling and they're not being, certainly in British wrestling, not being big, recognizable, kind of very out there characters. Session Moth Martina is absolutely one of those. And it wouldn't surprise me to see her on that list next year. And finally, Tonga as well. I've been lucky enough to see her quite a few times. She recently featured at the Progress show in the 8 women's tag match with the Lana Austin experience. Another one that's really, really, really good. Seems to be getting about all of the promotions around the UK. And yeah, really hope to see her on that list next year as well.
Yeah, definitely. Names you mentioned there, yeah, I can't see why they should not be on the list next year. It looks like the UK scene is a little bit overlooked. If you think of, in the UK alone, we probably have 100 to 150 active women's wrestlers, some on the lower scale and some obviously on different scales of development and different shows that they may be on. But we have plentiful, and some of the names you mentioned there, like Rio, she went over to Tokyo, Japan this year. Charlie Morgan main evented a show in Dubai alongside Alex Windsor. So yeah, and people like Molly Spartan, Angel Hayes as well over in ICW, they've really been holding ICW's women division down for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Molly Spartan's usual tagging partner, Casey, should always be in the amongst the mix. I can only assume just due to injury is possibly why some. Because Seshimov, she's had big matches, but they seem to be interspersed. She doesn't seem to be regularly competing like some of the other women at the moment. I don't know if she's trying to save an injury or maybe just looking to hopefully get that big show AEW deal and doesn't want to. But yeah, as you say, there's so much talent in the UK for the women's division right now. Harley Hudson is the Scouse Mouse powerhouse over here in the Teen Tights show.
Yeah.
And Absolutely. LA Taylor, as you say, Southwest, Southeast scene, she's actually been dominating. I saw a lot of people confused as to who she was at Progress to begin with, but she had been making her way for a couple of years, and it's good
absolutely.
to see her get that.
I'm going to say, before I saw her in Progress, I was very, very much aware of who she was, and I've seen her at various shows across the country. And as you say, she's been wrestling now for a couple of years, and it's nice to see her start to get that little bit of recognition. And also, again, not in terms of character, but just for her, more in terms of stature and look, she towers above an awful lot of the women's division. And there aren't that many people certainly in British, like UK wrestling, independent wrestling, that have that kind of look and stature and physique. And that's something that's quite refreshing, I think. So if you look at a lot of other people on that list, I mean, this past Friday, I saw Harley Hudson against LA Taylor here in Coventry, a show my friend put on. That size difference there, like obviously Harley Hudson is quite short. That's part of her thing is, short, but, strong as hell sort of thing. But then other people on that list, she towers above the majority of people, certainly on my list. And I think if you look at a lot of other people in the UK independent scene, so that's nice. That's nice to see just something a bit different.
Yeah, to your normal. We have got a nice mix like in the UK women's, from power. You've got powerhouse wrestlers, you have technical wrestlers, you have wrestlers that are your beauty wrestlers, Mariah May, Zoe Lucas, and there's just so many great. It's just and we missed out their names, Mariah May and Zoe Lucas. How did they not feature? I mean, Mariah May's been making waves in America recently. Zoe Lucas is booked to be in America. She's making her comeback, which is amazing to see. So look forward to seeing her more.
Also, you only have to look at the list of people from NXT UK. There's an awful lot of people on there, and whilst yes, they were kind of what's the word, squirreled away, if you like, on NXT UK TV. Some of these girls were names before that, and hopefully will continue to be afterwards as well. There was certainly a lot on there. Amel is one that stands out to me, who was fantastic. Really, really enjoyed watching. Nina Samuels, again, like sort of squirreled away on there. Hopefully after this, we'll start to kind of rise a bit more. And I think she was known before going to NXT UK as well. She'd had matches at Progress and stuff like that. I see Meiko Satomura was on that list, and while she didn't hone her craft over here, I think she really did a lot for the women in NXT UK and bringing someone very established and well recognized to bring everyone up to her level there. So hopefully, we'll see some of those women that were in NXT UK over the past couple of years really start to get a bit of a rise now that things are opening up a little more in terms of where they can wrestle.
Yeah, and it was also nice to see a couple of mainland European women make the list this year. Iva Koloski, a Hungarian, recently held the WXW Championship. I'd like to see Alice Inc. in the list next year. She's making her way into the UK. I'm assuming she just won the title of the WXW, so she may have just missed the cut-off. I think she must have just missed it because...
I would hope we see a lot more of her going into next year as well. I was lucky enough to see her at Coliseum Pro a couple of months ago when I was shooting there. She was absolutely fantastic. Had a match against Charlie Morgan. again, someone that's got a very unique look, absolutely covered in tattoos, has this very much a kind of street fighter kind of feel, like wrestles barefoot, has the tape, the bandages around and stuff, has clearly a mixed martial arts like Muay Thai background and stuff, and that's really, really refreshing to see something a bit different in the women's division there. So yeah, hopefully see her on that list next year, and a lot more of her over here in the UK as well.
She had a great match with Emerson Jane on for Body Slam. There it was an all-women, their first ever all-women show, and yeah, she absolutely killed it. A young name to look out from Spain is Maria De La Rosa. She is phenomenal. I think she's coming out of sort of like that White Wolf, Carlos Romo, A-Kid area. So
okay.
She's somebody definitely to look out for next year. She was tipped as a future star in the PWI, not quite made the list this year.
Right.
But yeah, I think she's going to be a phenomenal talent. Let's talk about APPG, because they were originally brought in for certain reasons, and that's next on my list. So now they've recently been discussing and developing a professional industry standard for wrestling rings. It's so exciting as they may be able to push for a wrestling safety standard, and it would be a huge step forward for the industry, which I agree with.
Absolutely.
I know a lot of people, I saw a few comments like, oh, this isn't what they were put together for. I thought this was to be driving out the nonsense, or any type of comments like that. Well, that kind of also has to be done internally by the promotions as well. There's only so much, without there being an actual governing body. APPG are not a governing body. It'll be interesting to see how they can, because ring standards should be something in the UK. I've talked to a lot of some of the older wrestlers back in the days, and they'll tell you about some absolutely awful rings they've had to compete in. But so something like that, when it comes to the safety of performers, it should be top of the list. And I recently had guys on who watched Royal Quest, and apparently Red Shoes throughout the match kept complaining about the ring.
There was a particular part of the ring, I was there for that, and you could see him, he kept going over to it. I didn't know what it was about, but there was clearly something, he had a bee in his bonnet about it. So yeah, I know exactly what they're on about.
So yeah, it definitely seems like that they may have a few different standards compared to us, but how could it possibly be policed is going to be the issue.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, unless there's a representative at every single show that happens across the UK, which I don't see happening,
yeah,
it's going to be very difficult to police. I think
promotions could maybe be forced into yearly checks.
Yeah, like a general kind of, you get a eateries, hospitality places, that kind of food standards thing. I guess something down that route where there's a checklist, and you have that at some point throughout the year, and you're checked on it, I guess. I mean, I know that there's probably there's two sides to every coin. There's two arguments and two perspectives to everything. And I imagine there's people on the other side thinking, well, how much is this going to take away from kind of independent wrestling? Is it going to be governed too much? Is there going to be this and that? And is it going to mean that, my local promotion or a show that I go to regularly is going to be shut down or scrutinized or whatever? I think, as you said, the most important thing is the safety of the people in the ring, the safety of the people that you are paying to come and see. And I'm sure, obviously, I'm not part of that whole conversation and that kind of governing body and whatnot. But I'm sure there's things in place, or there's those ideas in place there as to how they would police this, how they would go about it. I think your suggestion of maybe that kind of annual check, that we've completed this, or we've reached this standard, is a great shout. I know there's been, and we'll get onto it in a moment, but I know there's been various conversation in the last week about paramedics on site and people adequately trained enough to deal with particular situations. there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a lot of things to consider. But as I say, I think the health and safety of those between those four posts is absolutely paramount, and anything that can be done to ensure that they're enabled to continue to do their job as safely as possible, as regularly as possible, is the most important thing here.
Absolutely. And yeah, so we'll talk about somebody, I believe a former wrestler who is a trained paramedic tweeted out that every show should have a paramedic, and apparently this became a hot button issue, which I was quite surprised about. I thought we agreed that every show should have a, with the the 5 pledges of equity, and I know not every promotion brought into having equity at their shows, but I thought that was sort of like, how can you jeopardize the safety of your performers by not having one there?
Yeah. I think, and I was thinking about this, I saw the various tweets, conversations and whatnot that went about, and was thinking about this a little bit more in depth just before we started recording. And I think if you're going to put on a wrestling show, and people would agree, disagree, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but as we said, health and safety and everything that goes around that of the talent is paramount. And I think if you're a promoter, booker, what have you, someone that's going to be putting on a show, your first priority should be ensuring that there is someone adequately trained enough on site for the duration of the show that can deal with any situation. That should be, I know I've heard and seen a lot of stuff, a lot of conversation about, oh, well, they can't afford to have this person in, or, they can't afford to get a paramedic in, or this, that, and the other. If you can't afford to bring in someone that makes sure that your talent are safe, then maybe you should be reconsidering whether whether you should be putting on a show or not. If the consideration of not having someone on site that's able to deal with an emergency situation, if that's not something that's in the forefront of your mind when you're booking a show, then to me, you haven't got those people's well-being as a key consideration. And I completely understand promotions, big and small, have budget requirements and this, that, and the other, and it costs to get this and that in and stuff, but you can't put a price on the health and well-being of an individual during something like a professional wrestling show where, whilst it's a controlled environment to a degree, we see it happen, whether it's at, national level, international level, worldwide level, big promotions, small promotions, it happens, and you can't put a price on that.
And it makes you wonder if people are even carrying out a risk assessment on a particular venue, or say their rings or whatever, because when I was back at university doing my 1 year of sports, one of the things we looked at when in sports management was risk assessment. Everything you did, everything you needed to do had to be risk assessed. And you wonder with some of these promotions if they're even bothering to look into things like that. And I know it's difficult, and you can say, well, there's no governing body, so why should? But people who are going to go into training, shouldn't they have to do a year of sports science or something?
There has to be accountability there, isn't there? I think, and yeah, just look after the people. Just look after the people that you're bringing in, because ultimately, if something does go wrong, who's to blame? Who does that come back on? Like, if that's a preventative measure, or not preventive, you can't prevent a potential injury. But if you've got someone that's on site, ready to respond immediately, that could potentially reduce that risk or reduce the severity of an injury because they're there on hand to react first. Like, just do it.
Yes.
Just
please keep your performers safe.
Keep your performers safe.
Especially if their performers are like Leon Slater, who
Yes.
is going to be joining, or has been announced for a GCW show in November. Are you surprised of how quickly this man has come from nowhere and is now everywhere?
Well, yes and no. Like I'm surprised just how quickly, but equally I'm not surprised because he's so good. And we were saying this on the podcast the other week when we were talking about him, and I believe it was just after his match with Liam Slater at the Progress show in Manchester, and just said, make the most of these opportunities that you get to see him on these UK shows, because it's not going to be long before he snapped up and he's in a contract. He is phenomenal. He's an incredible talent. It's so good to see these opportunities, these things coming up for him so early in his career. I don't know how old he is, but he's not old at all, and still got many years ahead of him. And to see just how quickly he's risen up, gained that notoriety, and as you say, GCW imminent is amazing, and credit to him because he is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, so this has likely come off the back of his GCW performances for TNT Extreme GCW, where he had a phenomenal match against Blake Christian, and then had a phenomenal match for In Progress as part of that huge. So yeah, it's not really. And you look back at that match he had against Speedball Mike Bailey. A lot of people say that was his breakout match. I think his breakout performance was the Everything Pattern London show where Roy Johnson and he was in the Fatal 4-Way. I had seen him for a small promotion in Newcastle. I think it was Prime Wrestling Entertainment, and it's the first time I'd ever seen him. I remember Rebecca Resner and Crash Broke right there, both told me very adamantly that this is the most talented man that they've ever seen. And so I got to see him, and I watched him not do a leapfrog, but just do a standing leap over his opponent. And yeah, that Fatal 4-Way match he had was just phenomenal. Before then, obviously, he got teamed with Man Like the Reese in North Wrestling NCL. Random combination added. He was on a pre-show match, and I think it was Jodie Fleisch who was probably supposed to be Man Like the Reese's partner, but he'd gotten injured. So, and then from there he gets, Man Like the Reese goes to Roy Johnson, have him on your show. He has him on his show, and suddenly he's in Rev Pro UK, beating Leo Rush very recently in the British J Cup. He is a phenomenal talent. I don't think there's anybody with that much raw talent since Will Ospreay, and to be honest, he's probably got more raw talent than Will Ospreay does. Just a little bit more. Just a little bit more.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. But I mean, because you look at Callum Newman, I thought he was going to be that guy that really, but it seems like Leon Slater is kind of just overtaking him a little bit.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And I wonder if that's because Callum just wants to have fun. I remember an interview I did with Callum, and he already said, I just want to have fun. I want to do flips in the rings. I'm not too bothered about being the next Will Ospreay. I'm not bothered about what everybody has to say about me. I just want to have fun and do flips in the ring. And he certainly does. And the CPF are a great team.
Yes, I agree. I'm just so excited to see what he does next, where he goes, because as you say, an incredible talent, raw talent. And I think I'd agree, last person UK wise that kind of broke out like that, where he just got star rated all over him, was probably Will Ospreay. Also, can we also have Will Ospreay against Leon Slater at some point fairly soon, please? Preferably in the UK, so I can watch it.
Rev Pro UK, Andy Quilden, please sort that out for that.
Please give us that.
Just in time. But talking about one of the most youngest, rawest talents to one of the most experienced, biggest names left in the UK, Rampage Brown, returning from injury. He's back. at least for 2 matches, well, 3 matches that I've seen on the UK wrestling scene at the moment, and a couple of training. I know he's doing a seminar, I think, for British Wrestling Evo, which is BWR's promotion or training facility with Nathan Cruz. But great to see Rampage back. It's been so long since that freak injury against Ilya.
Yeah, I was at the BT Sports Studio for that NXT UK taping when that happened. And at the time weren't sure whether it was kind of legitimate or not. Obviously, it was his appearance at TNT Extreme Fields this past Saturday was his first appearance since that injury. I was chatting to him a little bit, I think just after the Rumble match, which is what he appeared in. He said he went into that match as well, slightly injured as well. So then on top of that, terrible shame. But so good to see him back. As you say, kind of one of the how to put it, kind of the heads of I guess kind of British wrestling, an experienced head, a well-recognized figure, well respected and looked up to, and just so good to see him back. And such a lovely guy. So for someone that looks so intimidating, is the nicest guy going. He's an absolute delight. But yeah, incredible to see him back. Not sure what's going on kind of contract-wise, whether it's kind of a few dates and whether it's anything, then he's with NXT Europe as and when that gets going. Or what, I don't know, because I don't recall seeing him on any kind of list of NXT UK talent that was released a couple of months ago. So I don't know what's going on there. But the positive is that he is back out, seemingly healthy and wrestling again, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I think it felt like he never got his just deserves with NXT UK just due to that freak injury. Never got to, or NXT UK never getting to perform in front of a proper live crowd. I feel like if there had been a stadium or arena show at least for NXT UK, he would have been the man to dethrone Walter, but they just couldn't find that to happen. He is so good, and I think he's going to be in Leeds upcoming for True Grit Wrestling. I think that's going to be. That's it. As you say, one of the best trainers as well. So he certainly could continue to provide a role for NXT, whether that's NXT or NXT Europe. He can certainly provide some sort of role. He's been, if you think about the amount of people who have come out from that Northwest scene, that have come out from underneath Rampage Brown, it's just, he's a phenomenal talent. I'd like to see, where do you think he could fit in roster-wise with NXT?
I'm not sure I'd like to see him on it. I think I'd like to just see him come to Progress. Just be Progress World Champion. I'd like to see that. I would also, to your point about NXT, I think he was probably deserved of more than he got. And whether the injury played a part in that or not, I don't know. But I'd have liked to have seen him go to the top in NXT UK. Certainly, like, as it is NXT UK, whether, he's part of the Europe thing or not, I don't know. But as someone that was so well respected, renowned, and well known within the UK scene, I think that had been kind of the icing on the cake to have him at the top of that men's division there. But as I say, I'm just happy to see him back and wrestling, and wherever he goes, he'll have a huge impact. And whichever promotion he sticks at or moves about to will massively benefit from him being there, the promotion itself, and all of the other talent on that roster.
Absolutely. So, as I say, it's this Friday, it's 4th of November. He's in Leeds for True Grit Wrestling against one of his students in Unserico. And then he's at Catch Pro Wrestling on Monday the 7th, where he's going to be facing off against another one of his young students in Brady Phillips. So, yeah, it looks like maybe he's doing the little tour beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll have to wait and see. I do think he could have a role in either sort of any type of coaching backstage, but an Atlas run in progress could be something he could do. And there's a
That'd be
few.
nice.
I think TNT Extreme with guys like Sam Gradwell, Rampage,
Mm-hmm.
and Ashton Smith
Yeah.
could really
Yeah.
help separate their talent roster a little bit
Yeah.
from a progress as well. Because I think
Yeah.
UK needs to do that a bit more. I think a lot of these rosters
I would
seem
agree.
to be a bit too much. Let's
Yes.
talk about progress anyway. We'll do very, very quickly. Their most recent show is Snake Charmer, available on demand. Progress. This was their final Deadly Viper tour. In Cardiff, Wales. Lycos Jim defeated Kid Bandit and Warhorse. Raven Creed defeated Tonga. Lana and LA Taylor defeated Jetta and Rio. Kanji defeated Millie McKenzie. Lana Ross and Experience jumped them. Rio came out. Tonga came out. Raven Creed came out, eventually setting up the match that you'll talk about as part of Wrestling Witch Face. FSU then defeated Callum Newman and Danny Black. Nico Angelo defeated Joe Lando in the MPS quarterfinal. Sunshine Machine defeated Greedy Souls in that table elimination match. And Spike Trevay defeated Mike Bird. Some quick thoughts on this one. I thought having McKenzie lose and then doing the jumping afterwards kind of derailed Millie's run a little bit. I think they maybe should have had that just happen and have it as a no contest. That way you can save Millie from taking the loss there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
FSU, Callum Newman, Danny Black, bloody fun. Nico Angelo, Joe Lando, so good. Such a shame the freak accident to Joe Lando right at the end. Great quick thinking from Nico to just go for the cover there and then. So hopefully we'll see just Joe Lando back in 2023.
Yeah.
Sunshine Machine, that table match was a bit weird because it was elimination, but then nobody actually got eliminated because it's a table match and DQs don't matter. So therefore, technically, if you're eliminated, you can just stick around.
Yeah.
And then you had the Spike Trevay, lots of interference, lots of referee bumps. Kind of becoming very typical of Spike Trevay, very reminiscent of the fifth Progress Champions run when he had the title for a long period. But did you get to see this card?
I haven't watched it yet, but it is on demand, so I will be watching it at some point soon. I went to a couple of the Deadly Viper Tour shows, Birmingham and Manchester. Both were really, really good. I think, how many did they do in total? I want to say maybe 6 or 7.
I think
Newcastle, Sheffield, Birmingham, Manchester, Cardiff. Is that all of them?
Yeah, I think it was 5, but they did Cardiff twice, but one of them technically wasn't a Deadly Viper tour, was it? It was just thrown in there. But yeah, I thought the Deadly Viper tour was good. I thought they were quite well received everywhere they went, just despite a lot of some negativity towards Progress on Twitter. It's like they've become the WWE of the British independent scene recently. With some of the, when you look at the complaints that they make, just don't feel they're worth. But I think they've been doing a great job. I think their shows, yes, they're not packing out 751,000 people into the Electric Ballroom yet. I think they will do. I will say some of their shows can often be a bit long.
Yeah, I feel that. I know we'll talk about it in a moment, the most recent one, they actually decided to start it a bit earlier. And it felt like it went a little quicker with that slightly earlier start time. I don't know why that half an hour made so much difference. But I do feel that they at times do feel like they drag on a little bit. I don't know whether it's worth them just running the whole thing straight through. Excuse me. I don't know if it's worth them just running it straight through without the interval. The interval is a bit that makes it kind of feel like it drags a bit.
Yeah, I mean,
I get why they put them in there, but Yeah, it's
they're
what, three
typically
and a half,
9-match
4 hours.
shows, and you can probably guarantee at least 4 matches are going to be 20 plus minutes. I think if I was to look at it, I would maybe run a few smaller progress chapter shows in between a big chapter, and that way not every show has to be 3.5 hours, because sometimes when you watch them on demand, they're 3.5 hours long.
Yeah,
They can be
pay-per-views are that long,
and
it's just like, well, yeah, and that's the other thing. I don't really. These aren't pay-per-views as such, but they're pay-per-view length.
Yeah,
and it's like, well, to your point, do you do say they do so like NXT used to do 4 takeovers a year? They do 4 big ones a year, and then maybe they have something slightly smaller in between to kind of build up to that. And so they're slightly shorter shows, but there you get the culmination of that at something quite big. I don't know, but it does feel like sometimes that with how much they cram onto those shows, and sometimes the frequency of them and the duration of them, that sometimes things are a little diluted. Like, it's all good. Like, there's rarely a bad match on a progress card, but
no, we're not saying these are like true negatives.
No, not at all.
Not
at all. But I think they may benefit from probably slightly shorter shows. And like, to your point about the Millie McKenzie one and losing that, it was just like, did you need to do that then? Like, it feels like she was starting to build some momentum. Could have maybe had that carry on a bit more. And I don't know. I'm sure they'll revisit it down the way at some point, but it just felt like she only debuted there or came into it not even that long ago. And it's just like, oh, okay, it's gone.
So rather than having one banger of a 15-minute, because it was a really good match, and I'm not diluting the match quality, I loved it, just didn't quite agree with the booking of it. But when you have, say, a 15-minute match, they could have converted that into just saying, right, go out there, do good 10 minutes, and then we'll send Lana and LA to attack you, and we can save, you just ways to shave a few minutes.
We know we're getting something between you later down the line with no interference. This is just building to that, and that's okay. Like, but to kind of come out and have 15-20 minutes and then the interference is like,
especially with the amount of shows they're running these days, they are running a lot more shows. I think RevPro UK do it quite well because they have the smaller live in London and live in Southampton and a couple of small shows, and then they'll have these big shows in between. I also think WXW do a really good version of it where they have pay-per-views to a degree, kind of big blow-off shows, and then they have their We Love Wrestling in between where they'll push stories, and also introduce some of their academy talents, the talents that wouldn't get onto the main show. But, these are all things I'm sure teething problems that Progress will be looking at. Now, you were at Wrestling Witchface, so why don't you give us the results and let us know what it was like?
Aye. So we had the Natural Progression Series 8 semi-final match between Ricky Knight Jr. and Leon Slater. We had a singles match between Malik and Anthony Ogogo with Costa Constantino and Adebayo Akinfenwa at ringside, and also a lot of other people that I didn't know or recognize, but were also quite sizable, certainly on Anthony Ogogo's side. We had Nina Samuels and Alexis Falcon. The other Natural Progression Series semi-final match between Nico Angelo and Tate Mayfair's tag team action, FSU, Eddie Dennis and Mark Andrews against CPF's Callum Newman and Danny Black. The WXW shotgun title match, which was nice to see defended on Progress. I think it's the first time that's been shown on anything but WXW, like in terms of kind of anything televised, which was really, really cool to see. We had Maggot champion defending against Man Like DeReese. Man Like DeReese had been in a WXW show not that long ago. Maybe only a couple of weeks ago. Nice. Then we had the 8-woman tag match, which, as you say, was the kind of blow off from the previous show, which was Baby Allison, Kanji, Millie McKenzie, and Rio against the Lana Austin experience, comprising of Lana Austin, LA Taylor, Sky Smithson, and Tonga. The Progress Atlas match, Big Damo champion against former champion Luke Jacobs and then the Progress World Title match, Spike Trivet against Dan Maloney, which had some really good build to it. They had the sit down interview with Lee McAteer beforehand. There was some really good little vignettes and promo videos that were going about in the build to that match, which was really, really good. Another really good show, but it felt very close to the previous one, the one at the Tram Shed in Cardiff. And I'm not sure how much impact that had on this, but I enjoyed it. It was really, really good. We've got the Natural Progression Series final now, which is between Ricky Knight Jr. and Tate Mayfairs.
I think that was always, when I saw it, I think that was always going to be the given final for me. Yeah, I think the two most talented. I know my Big Daddy Dan, he never thought Ricky Knight Jr. should have been in the Natural Progression Series. I was like, well, if you put him in there, he is 21. He suits the age bracket.
Of course.
Yes, he is well known and champion elsewhere, but it gives him a direct line to Spike Trivet as well.
Yeah.
I probably assume he's going to pick up the win at the moment, given the landscape. I think him versus Spike would be a really good dynamic.
Yeah.
But Tate Mayfairs is phenomenal. I think he's done great work. A lot of people, he's such a character, and I think his wrestling's overlooked a lot of the time.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll just take this opportunity to remind you that Tateness is greatness. Just in case you weren't aware, or you'd forgotten, or anyone listening wasn't aware or had forgotten. Just a daily reminder. I've got one set on my phone, so do the same.
It's worth it. It is. I think Lana Austin, because we're going to go on to, let's talk about the upcoming show, which is on the 27th of November.
Yep.
They think it's all over. Spike Trivet versus Jonathan Gresham, Chris Ridgway and Luke Jacobs versus Axel Tischer and Big Damo. Tom Dawkins versus Bullet, RKJ versus Tate in the finals, Rio Sky Smithson, Kanji versus Lana Austin, Chuck Mambo versus Kid Lycos, Hair versus Mask, world famous Cheeseburger in town to face man like Doris, Charles Crowley, Elijah, Anthony Agogo and Adebayo Akinfenwa versus Malik and Costa, plus Alexis Falcon and Laura Di Matteo. 11 matches on the cards. Biggest show yet.
That's a hefty show. Again, everything feels like it has its place on there for the most part, and it's fine, but just I don't know. I mean, you look how much these shows cost. I mean, you're getting your bang for your buck, aren't you?
Yeah.
£25, £26 a ticket, whatever it is. I typically just get a standing ticket. I don't think it's much more than that for seated. You get your money's worth. But it does just feel a bit like,
there's a lot of talent on that show.
Yeah. And you run the risk of some things getting overlooked or falling by the wayside a little bit when it shouldn't. As I say, everything on there has its place. But it is a cracking card for that. Highlights for me that stick out there, obviously the Natural Progression Series final. Mambo and Lycos Hair versus Mask is going to be fantastic. And if Lycos' last match against Chris Brooks is anything to go by in a one-on-one, oh boy. Very excited for that. Obviously the team of Axel Tischer and Big Damo reuniting again. We saw that at Super Strong Style earlier this year. For those who don't know, obviously both in Sanity when they were formerly in WWE. That should be fantastic. Really, really good. The Progress World title match. Elijah and Charles Crowley as well. We've got this weird version of Charles Crowley with kind of numbers painted all over his face, coming out looking like who was it? Was it Albert that did his Tensai gimmick with all the the stuff painted on the face? I'm just like kind of hobo Tensai.
Yeah, it's interesting to see where Crowley kind of goes with this. He's been the spectacular one for. It doesn't feel like it's even been for that long. It feels like such a short turnaround for a gimmick change, but we'll see whether it's a permanent gimmick change. I always thought I'd like to have seen a Crowley's Freaks table.
Yeah.
And so,
like Crowley Circus as a faction.
Yeah.
I still think we will. I feel like he knows and everyone else knows that the Spectacular One gimmick has a lot of legs. And I think this is just another wrinkle in that gimmick. And it's something that can be revisited. I don't think we've seen the last of the Spectacular kind of gimmick. That's got a lot of legs. Only recently has he been over to, I think it was Canada he was at a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
You know, that character, that gimmick is clearly huge and over and well received wherever he goes. It would be a shame to see him not use that, but I don't think there's any chance of that happening. I think this is just a very much not to compare it to, although no, I will compare it to, because they're clearly both very creative minded individuals. The whole Bray Wyatt thing, we've got these different kind of wrinkles of this character and different iterations and stuff like that. I think I see, obviously not to that level, but that Crowley has that in him to be like, well, okay, you've got the Spectacular gimmick, you've got whatever this is that he's been teasing the last few weeks and what we're going to see against Elijah. I think he can do so much of this. Like you say, there's the whole, can have a circus faction of his kind of traveling circus of freaks and whatever he wants to call them, sort of thing. There's a lot of legs in it, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I think we were talking about the PWI women's list earlier. I'd expect to see Crowley in there and quite high up on the men's list next year, given everything he's done this year as well, and starting to get that notoriety certainly outside the UK.
Sky Svensson is another name that should have been on the list, to be honest.
Yes,
she's so bloody good as well,
Absolutely.
and keeps getting better. I think there should be a title change in Lana and Kanji. I think if you don't strike soon with Lana, you're going to start to lose the buzz. I think right now she's the hottest thing in Progress.
Yeah.
I think it's put the title on her and see where you go from there.
Yeah. I think I agree. I love Kanji. I think she's fantastic. I'm not necessarily sure it was the right decision to put it on her after Giselle Shaw.
Yeah.
I'd have liked to have seen maybe some sort of tournament for that. A bit like Super Strong Style, but not necessarily Super Strong Style, but a tournament for that. And we saw this kind of natural rise of Lana Austin come through that and get to the final. Kanji's been a great champion. It did feel like they were stuck in a little bit of a holding pattern when it was just her constantly against, was it Laura Di Matteo? And they just couldn't seem to kind of find a resolve for what to do there. And it didn't really feel like there was ever a payoff at the end of that. But yeah, I think, like you say, strike while the iron's hot. If you don't do it now with Lana Austin, where's all that momentum got? Like, when are you? Exactly.
Now, you were at TNT Extreme Fields.
I was indeed.
An amazing 12-match show. I think, or was it 13?
16?
16.
I think I disappeared for a few parts of it because I was shooting some interviews upstairs. I think initially it was a 16-match card, including a Rumble. Whether or not all of them went ahead or not, I don't know, but the majority did. And yeah. I think one was down for a match and then was more an altercation, like a verbal kind of promo thing. But there was plenty on there. I've got the card in front of me. We had so much. So for those that don't know, Extreme Fields is kind of it's a one-day indoor festival of professional wrestling, rock music, arcades, market stalls, fancy dress, and all of that inside Electric Warehouse, which is situated in Liverpool. So we had representatives from Wrestle Island, Pro Wrestling Chaos, North Wrestling, LWF, which is the Lancashire Wrestling Federation. Have I said Wrestle Island? Wrestle Island, I said Wrestle Island.
Soft Pro,
of course. How could I forget? And Infamous as well.
Yes.
So yeah, really, really good. And for someone like me that hasn't had a chance to attend many, if any, actually, of those other promotions outside TNT, it was really nice to have that as a bit of a showcase as to some of the rising talent that they have on their roster. So we had Bronco Brendan White against Harrison Bennett. That was the Pro Wrestling Chaos match. Who else did we have? For LWF, we had is it Davey Getsky against Aiton Steen.
Yeah.
James Greenwood against Charles Crowley. For those who don't know, James Greenwood is a referee, and their back and forth leading into this match on social media was absolutely fantastic. We had Lance Rivera against Harley Hudson, representing Wrestle Island. The previous match, rather, for Davey and Aiton was representing LWF. Visage and Shay Monet was more an interaction. Visage is injured, and they came out, cut a promo, and basically Shay Monet will be facing Effie at Cold Day in Hell with Visage as special guest referee. Which should be very fun. Sov Pro were there representing. We had Bullet against Danny Proper. Bullet is Spike Gervais heavy, if you like, and it's fantastic. And if you've not seen him, it's a pleasure to watch. So
Very
good.
big man.
We had a TNT Extreme Division Championship Spooky Halloween death match. Clint Margera against Lou Nixon. Representing Infamous, a real technical masterpiece, which is fantastic. It was Joey Hayes against Dylan Roberts. That was really, really
very good. Underrated performers.
Yeah, absolutely. Tate Mayfair's against Scotty Rock. Fantastic. Really, really fun to watch. And again, Tate Mayfair's
amazing
bravado, big character, amazing talents. But yeah, another match where you just like, oh, Tate can really wrestle. Don't overlook that. He is fantastic. We had a few tag team matches. In fact, no, one tag team match and a four-way. So we had the She-Wolves against the Liver Birds. Really interesting finish to that, where we had essentially the split of the Liver Birds and a kind of sort of face turn, I guess, for Lizzie Evo. Which was an interesting one. Yeah, really, really cool. North Wrestling, we had a fatal four-way, which was, we've mentioned both of them earlier, Leon Slater against Liam Slater, against Will Cruz, against Jack Bandicoot. Fantastic stuff. Alexis Falcon.
Love Jack Bandicoot.
Yes.
Absolutely love him. I really do.
Alexis Falcon against Millie McKenzie for the TNT Women's Championship. Nico Angelo against Tom Thelwell for the TNT Ultra X Championship. Big Guns Joe and Simon Miller. And then Dan Maloney and Mike Bird for the TNT Championship. So it was cracking. And then obviously we had the Rumble. We had the Crazy House Rumble. For those wondering why it's called the Crazy House Rumble, Electric used to be called the Crazy House. And then I think just before maybe the pandemic, changed to become the Electric Warehouse. And that was where we got the return of Rampage Brown.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. But all in all, a cracking show. Really, really, really good. It's the first one I've been to. I've not been to an Extreme Fields before. But as I say, just to see all of those different promotions there represented, all of those different individuals that represent those promotions that you don't get a chance to see outside of there, really puts a spotlight on them. Absolutely fantastic. And there's certainly a lot of faces, a lot of names that I will go out of my way to see now I know of them, wherever they are across the country.
So which ones were the standouts in that regard? Some of the guys who you didn't know before, who do you are now a fan of?
Bullet I hadn't seen before. I'd known a Bullet and obviously known him as Spike Gervais Heavy. To actually see him in a match was an absolute joy because he is fantastic. Lance Rivera is someone that I've been told I need to see more of. A couple of guys on the podcast regularly go to Wrestle Island shows, and he's on that. He was fantastic. Aiton Steen as well isn't someone I was familiar with before. Joe, to give him a shout out, Joe from the Damn It Vince podcast is a huge fan of him and really, really enjoyed watching that match. Who else did we have on there? Harley Hudson, I mentioned her at the start as someone I definitely think should be in that 150 next year. Her match against Lance Rivera, fantastic, really, really good. And then, the match for Infamous, actually, the one that was the real technical standout, which was Joey Hayes and Dylan Roberts. Not familiar with either of those guys, but thoroughly enjoyed that. Would love to watch them again. And then I guess finally someone that I had only seen once before at one of the Progress Sidewinder tours, Deadly Viper tour, was Liam Slater, who is the current North champion, I think.
Yeah.
He's fantastic. Is it the postmodern wrestler? Is that his
whole
gimmick
sort
of
of
shtick?
moment?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah, really good. But just hell of a lot. I don't know where TNT are putting that up to watch. I hope they are. Because if you weren't there in person, I'd thoroughly recommend watching that just for the wealth of talent from the show.
I mean, fingers crossed it will go out for free on Pro Wrestling TV, which have been the new streamer partner for TNT Extreme. Yes. And if that's the case, go out your way because it's free. So you're not going to lose out any money to watch some great wrestling. You won't get to see the live bands in action. Did any of the bands really impress you?
None of the bands were there. And unfortunately, it was announced on the day they had issues with the few bands that were left that were due to turn up, and there wasn't any live music, which was a little bit disappointing. However, it did allow me time to focus on the wrestling which is primarily what I was there for. But they had some dropouts very, very last minute. Unfortunately, none of the bands could be on there. But hopefully for next year, I did suggest karaoke or an open mic, and to just go up and do some wrestling song covers. But that fell by the wayside. Maybe next year.
Should have got Scotty Rourke to get his band down there, because I'm sure he's part of a band as well. Definitely some talents to look out for on that show, as you mentioned. North Wrestling NCL, they had their most recent show is available to watch on Indie Wrestling TV now, or via their Patreon, which is The World at Large. It originally took place on the 15th of October. Sold out crowd as usual. They do typically sell out their shows, which is really good for North Wrestling NCL. I did suggest on one of my other podcasts that they should maybe look to move out of the Anarchy soon, because if they continue to sell out, maybe it's time to expand. But every business decision needs to be looked at very carefully. Warhorse was there. He defeated Jet Marshall, Rory Coyle, Connor Renshaw, and Crash Boat, which is Jake Silver and Jack Bandicoot. They defeated the Landed Gentry of Benji and Zio Knox, Screwface Armored, and Big Lou Nixon. Lana Austin defeated Casey Owens. Boisterous Behavior, the team of Leon Slater and Man Like Doris, defeated Sunshine Machine. Will Cruz defeated Kid Bandit. Millie McKenzie defeated Lizzie Evo. HT Drake defeated Gene Money. Liam Slater defeated Joe Hendry. And any review I do of North Wrestling, I always like to shout out the North Wrestling Faithful, or that's what they're called, the fan group, the North Wrestling Faithful. They make every show feel special. They are really very much an early Progress crowd, so interactive. Every match is loud, and they let you know who they're going to support as well. When they actually just chose to cheer for Jet Marshall as the local young lad who was brought in last minute because it was supposed to be Amir Jordan, but he picked up an injury to face Warhorse. And the big US independent star who they assumed get cheered got booed, especially when he actually picked up the win. So I think that's always great to see. He did win the crowd back over with an impassioned speech in which he put over Jet Marshall for taking the match last minute. The highlight of the show did go to Man Like Doris and Leon Slater versus Sunshine Machine. It was just everything you can expect from these guys. Sunshine Machine are a well-oiled tag team that do some of the best tag team moves in wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Probably too many of them, but they do literally every tag team move in British wrestling. I know they are fantastic at doing it. I would never begrudge the talent they have, but Leon Slater, a man like Reese, less so talented as a team, but two extremely talented individuals who just do things that, I mean, Leon Slater just does ridiculous things. He's just too
makes
good.
It look effortless at the same time as
really
well. Like
does.
It's nothing. Like just one-legged, like 450 splashes off the top rope. Like, what are you playing at?
The Swanton 450, where he literally goes up for a Swanton bomb and then just tucks it all in last minute.
Yeah.
It's over the
Unreal.
turnbuckle dive. The GCW show where he did the corner to corner.
Yes.
And we're talking about the diagonal length of the ring, not the Jesus.
Just
but
unreal. Absolutely unreal.
So every near fall, every amazing dive flip, was just made 10 times better by the fact that the crowd ate everything up for it. I'll give a special mention to the 8-man tag match that also had lots of flips, dives, and things. And there's always a fun match when you've got Crash Boat, but I always find 8-man tag matches can get a bit too crazy sometimes, so it's hard to keep track of. Other than that, the championship match between Joe Hendry and Liam Slater, just technical storytelling at its best. You had Joe Hendry trying to show that he wasn't just this gimmick of music and whatnot, and that he is one of the best wrestlers in British wrestling, which he is. And congratulations on his Impact debut recently. So Joe Hendry's going to go out there and kill it. But Liam Slater, one of the most underrated talents of the last few years. I mean, he is a 10-year veteran. I was very surprised when they put him in the Natural Progression series because he was the North Wrestling champion as well. It's like, maybe you should have given him a championship match and had someone like Daz Black as a young Newcastle lad. Or Shreddy is another big name, I think.
Yeah.
Going to do great. But this was brilliant, just absolutely great wrestling throughout, great story being told, and eventually it was Slater who came away with a win via kind of a roll-up pin, and then, Kid Bandit was welcomed with open arms with the North guys. They absolutely loved them. Match against Will Cruz was very entertaining. G-Money and HT Drake was also very entertaining. Lana Austin keeps proving that she is one of the best things in British wrestling right now, and Casey is always going to be one of the best women's wrestlers. And Lizzie Evo and Millie McKenzie just did what Lizzie Evo and Millie McKenzie do each match and just absolutely killed it.
Yeah.
I would definitely go out. If you're not on Indie, IWTV, I think that's $9.99 a month. I think there's a couple of other British guys on there. I think Title Championship are on there, and Resurgence Wrestling are on there as well.
Yes, Resurgence, my local promotion. I do quite a bit with them. Love Resurgence.
So yeah, they're on there as well. And their next show is on December 2nd, which has Effie on show. And it's going to be a championship match between Liam Slater and Michael Oku, which is going to be a great match. And I think a lot of people may underrate how great this match might actually be.
Going to be fantastic, no doubt about it.
So certainly I'm definitely going to be there. Now, we forgot to talk about the upcoming TNT Extreme show. Where is it? It's Cold Day at Hell, December 1st. You've got the TNT Tornado Tag Wars, multiple teams fight simultaneously. Kings of the North and Greedy Souls have been announced. Any other teams you reckon will probably get in there? Smoking Aces.
Smoking Aces, always a good shout. Like to see Sunshine Machine in there, just because if there's going to be a lot of tag teams in there, we're going to need some wild spots. So why not chuck those two in? Have they announced La Rebellion or not, or is it the idea that
the winner is going to face La Rebellion at Merseyside Massacre, which is on January 14th? You mentioned Effie versus Shay. Yep. Special guest referee Visage. Clint Margera is going to defend against John Wayne Murdoch in an Extreme Division match, but it's a weird. Did you see the actual stipulation? Oh, a dry ice death match.
Okay.
So I have no idea how this is going to work.
Not a clue. This come from the crazy warped mind of Jay Apter, I imagine.
Yeah,
can't wait.
I'm sure Big Daddy Dan would love this. He's the deathmatch fan out of me and Dan. I love the technical wrestling.
Yeah.
What's your favorite style of wrestling before you go then?
I don't know. Tag team wrestling. Is that a style of wrestling? I guess it is. There's more room for just shenanigans. I just mentioned Sunshine Machine, and just really creative, inventive spots. I've never really been a big deathmatch fan. I've been to a few TNT shows this year, and I wouldn't say it's won me over, but I certainly have an appreciation for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I've always been a tag team wrestling fan.
Excellent. Now, there's actually going to be a second part to this week because I've got a good friend of mine joining to do his review of the OTT anniversary shows. I'm going to be doing some reviews of WXW Germany. That's going to be coming out on Friday. This should be released this Wednesday. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for joining us as the guest co-host this week, Troy. And you will be back on, trust me, because plenty of wrestling knowledge there, and it's nice to tap into that.
Thank you for having me. All the best.
And just remember, folks, don't feed the trolls.